Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Budget Magic. So this week we are heading to Standard for a deck I am super excited about. We are playing Blue-White Clue Flash. As you can see, $81 in the paper world, only 24 ticks online, so super cheap on Magic Online. And I think this deck is pretty sweet. So this one came out of the fact that a bunch of people had emailed me and tweeted at me and commented asking about the Blues Clues deck, which has been going around, which is like a rug-colored clue token deck. So I played a couple matches with the clue token deck, and there was a couple things I really didn't like about the clue token deck. It felt like it had a really hard time generating pressure, especially pressuring planeswalkers. The deck felt actually like if an opponent played a Gideon or a Sorin or whatever, a Chandra, that it just scooped. Like, it couldn't get those off the table, which was pretty problematic. The other thing I really disliked is that I felt like I didn't have a chance to crack clue tokens very often. There just wasn't enough time. The way the deck was built, I'd get this huge pile of clue tokens, which is cool, like that's what you want to do, I guess, but I wasn't able to take advantage of them. They were just random artifacts sitting around. So a clue token's not that good unless you can actually sack it and get a card out of it. So this deck came out of my desire to fix those problems. So let's break it down. First off, this is the clue token package. So Thraben Inspector, essentially a one drop that makes a clue token. Mostly it's used for chump blocking. It can get in some damage now and then, but it's pretty much 1 mana, make a clue, chump block something. Bygone Bishop makes a clue token whenever we cast a creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. Works really well with Thraben Inspector. If you go Bygone Bishop into Thraben Inspector, you get 2 clue tokens, and then Ongoing Investigation lets you investigate or make a clue token whenever one or more creatures deals combat damage to a player. So you get in with a Bygone Bishop or one of our other creatures. We have a ton of evasive creatures in this deck, which is one of the reasons I wanted Ongoing Investigation. It seemed like we would consistently be able to trigger it. So that's how we're making clues. And then ever since Thraben Inspector was spoiled, I've wanted to play it with Thopter Spy Network. Thopter Spy Network is essentially a 4 mana Bitter Blossom that can also draw you cards and doesn't lose you life if you have an artifact. Well, with Thraben Inspector, and to a lesser extent Bygone Bishop and Ongoing Investigation, our deck can always have a clue token laying around to make sure that we have the artifact necessary to start making 1/1 Thopters with Thopter Spy Network. So it can generate a ton of value in a deck where we're always going to have a clue token. Some decks just have a really hard time dealing with Thopter Spy Network and the advantage it generates turn after turn. It's really good against controlling decks, spot removal decks. You can't really 1-for-1 your way through a Thopter Spy Network. It's going to generate such a huge advantage, and you don't really want to be spending actual removal spells on 1/1 Thopter tokens just to keep us from drawing a card. So that's kind of package 1 of the deck. The second package of the deck is this Flash Creature package with Dimensional Infiltrator and Rattle Chains. So these work really well with our Bygone Bishop, because whenever we cast them, we get a clue token, which of course turns on our Thopter Spy Network and so forth, the synergy. But the real advantage of these cards is they're aggressive flyers, which shores up that weakness to planeswalkers. Our opponent plays a Gideon, maybe we already have a Dimensional Infiltrator, Rattle Chains, we can cast another one at the end of turn, attack the Gideon down, so that's kind of the idea with those. Plus they allow us to play at instant speed. We do have to tap down, of course, for Thraben Inspector, which is 1 mana, Thopter Spy Network, and Reflector Mage, which we haven't talked about yet. But we have to tap out for those on our turn. Otherwise, though, Dimensional Infiltrator, Rattle Chains, and even Bygone Bishop, if we have a Rattle Chains, we can play at instant speed, which allows us to leave up our mana, so we can either cast a spell, cast a creature with flash, or sack our clue tokens at the end of our opponent's turn to draw more creatures and powerful spells, and so forth. Reflector Mage is just pure value. The deck is really a very tempo-oriented deck. It wants to get in some early damage with the flyers, play a Reflector Mage, bounce a blocker, get in some more damage, eventually stick the Spy Network, get some more flyers. We have a lot of evasive damage. Reflector Mage is just a way to set our opponent back, and it's a surprisingly good blocker. It blocks Sylvan Advocate before it gets powered up with 6 lands. It blocks a lot of things in the format, and when you can bounce something, make your opponent wait a turn to recast it, and block something, it's a ton of value for 3 mana. So even though we gotta tap out at sorcery speed to cast it, it's still good enough for the deck. So that's the basic idea of the deck. Get some clue tokens early, generate pressure with evasive, efficient creatures, and then after we get things set up, we just never want to tap out. We always want to wait till our opponent's end of turn, cast our Rattlechains, our Dimensional Infiltrators, our Bygone Bishops, crack clue tokens, or use these counter spells. So that's the third part of the deck is, since we are intentionally trying not to tap out on our turn, we just leave our mana up, and our opponent doesn't really know what's going on. Maybe we are leaving up a counter spell, maybe we are leaving up a flash creature or two, and maybe we just want to crack some clue tokens to generate card advantage, and oftentimes we have the choice between all of those. So we get to sit on a counter spell like Scatter to the Winds, negate Clash of Wills, Ojutai's Command. If we don't need to counter something, we can flash in a creature or crack clue tokens, which is awesome in a deck like this because it allows us to leave up counter magic and not get punished if our opponent does nothing. So if our opponent thinks we're leaving up a counter spell, an easy thing to do is just pass the turn, and then we essentially time walked ourselves by not doing anything. But when we have clue tokens and flash creatures, that's not a problem. We can sit on our counter magic and still do something if our opponent doesn't play a spell that we need to counter. The rest of the main deck cards are Stasis Snare. So Stasis Snare is not great. The big problem with Stasis Snare is Nahiri is really good at killing Stasis Snare, but it's a removal spell, an unconditional removal spell, that we can play at instant speed, which is kind of hard to find in white and blue. So that's the basic idea of it. It's another thing we can leave up. Maybe our opponent, I don't know, thinks we're going to counter a spell, but actually we let the creature resolve, then we just Stasis Snare it. It's another option. So not only can we flash in a creature, crack a clue, or counter a spell, but we also could be leaving up a removal spell like Stasis Snare on our opponent's turn, so it just creates a whole nother layer of guessing. Mana base wise, 8 dual lands, 7 basic lands, and then we also have 2 colorless lands, a Westville Abbey and a Foundry of the Consuls. This is another thing we can do on our opponent's end of turn, so that brings us up to 5 different things. Counter a spell, flash in a flyer, crack a clue, cast a removal spell like Stasis Snare, or we can make a 1/1 token or sack a Foundry of Consuls to get some more creatures. So it's just another thing we can do when we're not tapping out on our own turn. We want as many plays on our opponent's end of turn as possible, and these fit right into the plan. If we weren't on a budget, I would probably try to play more Westville Abbeys. Our mana is good enough that we could play more colorless lands. And Foundry of the Consuls has the benefit of turning on our Thopter Spy Network because it makes artifacts. So if for some reason we get a really weird draw where we don't get a clue token on the battlefield, this is a way we can turn on Thopter Spy Network at end of turn, and the tokens draw us cards when they attack if we have the Thopter Spy Network. In the sideboard, some more removal. This is essentially our aggro package. Silk Wraps for more early game removal. The 4th Stasis Snare, which Stasis Snare is awesome if we're not in a Nahiri matchup. That's the main card that blows us out. Also, Dramoka's Command to some extent. And then Planner Outburst. And then, against more controlling decks, we can side out some of our less impactful cards and bring in Void Shatter, Scatter to the Winds, and Negates. And then a couple of just random cards. Eerie Interlude, the main idea is it can save our board from a Wrath. Also an instant. It gives us something else we can play on our opponent's turn, and it can randomly generate value with Reflector Mage, although that's not really the plan. But the main idea is we can blink all our creatures in response to some sort of Wrath or Radiant Flames or something. And then Hallowed Moonlight shuts down Collected Company, shuts down token strategies. And that is Blue-White Clue Flash in Standard. So I had a lot of success with this deck, and I think it's actually pretty good. You'd be amazed how many decks don't have a good answer to 2-power flyers. Like, the format is very ground-oriented, except for Archangel Avacyn. But right now, most of the decks are looking to win on the ground. and our deck is pretty resilient to removal. Yes, our creatures die to a lot of things, but Thopter Spy Network can take over the game. We can get them back our creatures that die with Ojutai's command, and we generate so many clue tokens that we can keep drawing through our deck and drawing more action. So it seems like a very difficult deck to 1-for-1 to death. So I really like that aspect of it. Anyway, make sure to check out the website, mtggoldfish.com. Decks, prices, metagame strategy, pretty much everything and anything you could want related to Magic the Gathering. And if you enjoyed the deck, take a minute, click the like button and the subscribe button that are about to pop up on the bottom of your screen. It'll keep you up to date on all the latest and greatest in video content from mtggoldfish.com. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy Blue White Clue Flash in Standard, and I will talk to you soon.